So the ones that had their tails cut, or any animal that had their, like, pit bulls or Doberman, Lady Vampire Shadow, do they actually, or do they feel pain, or they're missing something, parts of their body? Do they feel like deprived more or less than a dog that never had their ears clipped off or their tails clipped off? I always wonder that.
Well, there would be some pain because even when they're that young, there are nerve endings that go through those body parts. But they wouldn't. They do feel the pain in the skin and the muscles and that, but not so much in the bones because the bones are still very soft when they're born, and that's usually when the tail docking is done. But with the ear cropping, they're usually between 3 and 4 months when the ears are cut and then taped up. So there is pain with that, and more so than I think the tail docking. But something that's interesting with tail docking and ear cropping is that there's something called phantom pain. And this happens with human amputees, that if somebody loses a finger or an arm, sometimes they will feel an itch or a pain in those missing appendages.
Like if they had their arm or their finger.
Yeah, if it was still there and in pain, they could feel it. Or they'd have an itch and they can't scratch it because the finger isn't there, but
I know.
The body
I know
is still
does
feeling
that
it.
sometimes.
Now, have you ever been around a pet that has been docked, and when you communicate with the pet, do they act different than a pet that has not been docked? Because I know you can communicate with the animals if you're close enough to them and feel their vibes or whatever you're feeling. Have you ever ran into a pet or someone's pet or just a stray dog? Because I know a lot of times animals just automatically start talking to you, or you talk to them, and ran into one that says, hey, I'm in pain, this is not right, this is not fair, why do they do this to me, or anything that's a little negative for them, their behavior?
Well, as far as I can remember, there's only one dog that I've ever come across who did have a docked tail, and she was a standard schnauzer, but she was just so happy in her personality, I don't think that she personally thought about it. But there are some dogs who, I've heard stories of people who do the T-touch, Tellington touch therapy, that they work with dogs who are constantly biting at their tail or the base of the tail, or they have an obsession with the tail. And I think that that's because there is some sort of residue pain in the phantom limb that is there. So what they do with that is they would do touch therapy to stimulate the cells so that the part that's docked is actually acting as the tail tip. Instead of feeling like it was cut off, it actually feels like that's the whole tail.
Yeah, that's very understandable. It's like a human amputation, and, you know, right, Lady Raven Nightshade, and you're so used to having your limb. So you don't see anything like spiritually, like they're walking, they're living a life of being vindictive or very unhappy being that way, or this just comes natural, their nature to be normal?
I think it depends on the dog, but I don't think there's any dogs that are really vindictive, because I don't think that is actually in their nature to be so. That's a human trait, but there are, I think there would be, just like there is human amputees, who they feel a pain or they do miss it. But with puppies who have had their tail docked at a very extreme young age, I don't think the majority of them even think about the tail being the old way, because that's all they ever knew.
So.
Yeah, that makes sense. This is Madam Star and Lady Raven Nightshade at the Waken Radio Talk Show with the pet psychic, Lady Vampire Shadow. The number to call in if you have a question or you have a dog that passed or crossed over, or a cat, or any kind of animal that was very, very bonded with you and your family, or you have some feeling of guilt and you want to find out if there was something that maybe Lady Vampire Shadow can tune in with your animal, give her an idea how they passed or what you were feeling. Sometimes maybe she can connect. The number to call in is 347-205-9317. And I want everybody to know that Lady Vampire Shadow has a site that you can go to and look at her with her horses. her animals, her dog out in the snow. She is such a loving, warm psychic that is so in tune with animals out there that we need more people like her to save these animals. And she has rescued animals from different areas. Please call the number. Don't be embarrassed. This is a real psychic that communicates with pets. Everything is real on this show. Right, Lady Raven Nightshade? There's no phonies here.
Absolutely.
Feel free to contact her at 347-205-9317. We have the switchboards ready, open for you to call. Don't be embarrassed. Any questions? There's no such thing as a stupid question, so we're here.
Well, only the one you don't ask.
Only the one you don't ask. It's true. And Raven Nightshade, you have anything else you want to add to this wonderful show? I mean, this is great. I have so many questions. I don't want to get selfish, so I'm giving people a chance to call and you ask questions.
Well, going back to the tail docking, now my greyhound, I adopted her. She's a retired greyhound from the local track, and she had her. And everybody asks me, do they always dock their tail? Because her tail is docked. And so that I was taking notes during that whole conversation. Now her tail was docked because she hit it on her crate and broke the tail, and the vet said that it would be best for her to have it removed.
Yeah,
so
they're very fragile.
did that. But I've noticed that you're talking about the phantom limb type thing, and I notice she does that sometimes. If she's walking through a tight place, she kind of turns around because I guess she expects she hits something, or I'm not quite sure, but she does that sometimes. And so yeah, I was taking notes during that. Now, going back to, you were talking about what procedure was it exactly that some people do that helps them?
Tellington Touch. If you Google Linda Tellington Jones, it should come up. And
Cool.
She has different books on the touches that you can do yourself at home on how to relieve different aches and pains. And it's really good for arthritis in animals or helping them with their emotional problems and things like that.
Oh, that's awesome. I will definitely have to do that because, like I said, I know every once in a while you'll catch her and she'll be over there and she'll just be, wagging her nub and she'll turn around and she'll go to snap at what would have been the end of it as if she's going to scratch or something, and then she just kind of, stops and looks at it as if, where did it go? So yeah, I definitely wanted to make sure I got that information straight so that I could go check that out. I think everybody should. That sounds like some really great information.
And another interesting thing about the Tellington Touch method is that it also works very good for healing wounds quickly. Recently, my husband has taken up a new hobby. He carves. He's been carving wooden spoons. And he wasn't paying very good attention there one night, and the chisel slipped, and he put it right into his hand.
Oh, no.
It's, between the index finger and the thumb, right on the fleshy part there, he gouged himself pretty good. And it bled for 2 days, and he wouldn't even let me look at it. And I offered to do him up some stitches because I can do that. And he said, no stitches. And he wouldn't go to the hospital, and it just bugged him. Then we usually sit and watch movies on the computer, so one day I just took his hand and just started doing my little hand movements and circles. And when you're healing a wound with the T-touches, you don't touch the actual wound, you work around it.
Yeah.
And that stimulates the cells to say we have to repair. And I was touching probably about a centimeter away from it, and he could actually feel my fingers on the wound. And it had bled for 2 days previous to this, and it didn't bleed after I was touching it.
So this is something that can be used for both human and animal. That is awesome.
Yep, and Linda has even written a book on T-touch for people, as well as with the animals.
Oh, gosh. I'm learning more and more as we're continuing here. We have a caller. We have a